Hello, everyone. My name is Stephen J. Palacini. I'm a licensed regulated Canadian immigration consultant with SJP Immigration Inc. And what I aim to do with this channel and with my YouTube channel in general is just provide as much information as possible, documentation, go through the entire process, show you guys how to do certain types of applications because many of them are actually quite simple. When you read the website and IRCC's guidance, they're not always that easy. But I do like to help DIY applicants and provide information. It's my way of marketing my services. My review services, my representation services, but also just trying to assist people in if they want to call Canada home temporarily or permanently. So if you have questions regarding immigration, I do encourage you to just engage on my channel. Make sure you like and subscribe because that way there's oftentimes a lot of other people with the same question, right? So when I answer on my YouTube, then other people can benefit from that knowledge, right? That free knowledge. And it also helps to grow my channel and grow my impact and encourage me to continue putting out these videos where I'm providing value in the videos. I'm not just promoting certain programs or schemes, but I'm actually providing information and valuable information and helping those that can prepare their own applications and then want to have an application review with me or with another consultant or lawyer. So please like and subscribe, help me out, ask questions, engage on the video that's most relevant to you. Today, what I'm going to do is because I just recently did how to do a visitor record extension. That is somebody extending their status as a visitor in Canada. So they want to remain beyond 6 months. I also have a client right now where I need to extend or at least apply for a new TRV. So to give you a bit of a background on this client, he originally came to Canada on an employer-specific work permit under a significant benefit LMIA exemption, C11, as a self-employed entrepreneur, was granted 1 year, of a work permit, a closed work permit with his own company, and in addition to being granted the permit at the port of entry, he was also granted a 1-year visa. Now, he came here and then decided, okay, maybe he wants to bring over his wife and family. So put in an application for his wife and she was approved. Now, he has now returned to Canada because his visa is still valid, but also has managed to extend his status till the end of 2025 with an open work permit under a public policy. So now he has a visa that only enables him entry into Canada until the end of February. But he has a status document, the closed work permit till the end of that original visa, but also an open work permit that does not authorize re-entry to Canada, but is valid until the end of 2025. Okay. So now what he'd like to do is apply for a visa that would match the length, of his work permit in Canada so that he can, if he needs to leave the country, he can, right? And re-enter Canada. So now I did the visitor record, how to extend your visitor status in Canada, but now I'm going to do how to extend a TRV because if you apply directly for a work permit, you're not going to have a multiple entry 10-year TRV. They're going to just give you a work visa that matches the duration of the work permit that they initially granted you. So many students get into this predicament as well, where they have their PGWP, they have their student visa that enabled them to come into Canada, then they apply for a PGWP, they have a 3-year post-graduation work permit or a 2-year post-graduation work permit, but their visa is no longer valid. So if something happens back home, overseas, they have to go back for a family emergency, they are concerned that, they're not going to be able to re-enter Canada because they no longer have a valid visa. And if they were already overseas, they're going to be facing sometimes ridiculous processing times of overseas visa offices. Whereas in Canada, when you're in Canada and you already have a valid visa, like a TRV, but it's about to expire, I've noticed in all the cases where I've applied, I've gotten decisions in as quick as 6 days and nothing more than 15 days I've ever waited. So these applications go to Ottawa. They seem to be processed fairly quickly, especially if the person already has a valid visa and they're on valid status in Canada, or they have a status document and they're trying to extend their visa to match that of their original status document. So I would recommend that people do this application. I always like it when people have a visa that matches their status document or at least exceeds their status document, because you never know when you'll have to leave Canada. I've had clients in the past, for example, that during COVID, they, have lost an elderly family member and were not able to go to the funeral because they didn't have a valid visa. So if they were to leave, then they would have to be reapplying for a visa to re-enter Canada. So I do always recommend, when you can, don't let your visa expire. Don't let your TRV expire. Make sure that you can, if you have to leave Canada, you can come right back. So it's a pretty simple application, and it's a little bit confusing when you look for it on the government website, okay? Because you're going to be using IMM 5257, which appears like a visitor visa from outside Canada, but you are actually just applying from inside Canada. It's not going to Edmonton like all the work permits and visitor records. This one's going to Ottawa. You will need to send your passport to Ottawa to be stamped and have it, sent back to you. So, because it's the visa, so it's going to be stamped in your passport, right? It's not a record. They're not mailing it to you. It's not a work permit. It's not a study permit. So I would highly recommend that you do this several months before you anticipate traveling, because you will be without your passport for 2 or 3 weeks, okay? But they are processed very fast, in my opinion, in my experience. And so let's get right to it. So basically, this is the page you want to be on. I'll make sure I put this in the description. Temporary resident visa, TRV. To apply for a visitor super visa, you can apply online. Okay, yes, apply online for a visa. We'll go through the secure account. I've pulled up both these document checklists. Now, they seem a little bit conflicting because they have one that says applicants in Canada, which would be us. This is for people who are in Canada looking to extend their visa. And they give me these 2 checklists, okay? So, based upon my experience and what I've done, yes, IMM 5257 must be completed. This seems like a more generic one because it's also including parents and grandparents super visa. This is the one that I've typically used and had no issues with. So yes, you're going to want to make sure you have a 5257. You're going to make sure if you have a representative, you're going to need to get this form signed. The authority to release personal information to a designated individual. This is if they're releasing information on your case file to someone other than yourself. So that would be, that's not a representative. So I think of that in terms of maybe if somebody's 80 years old and they can't do their own application. So if some, sons and daughters were doing it on behalf of, their parents. And statutory declaration of common law union. That's only applicable if you're in a common law relationship. So photocopy of the proof of payment and receipt number. Well, we know that in the GC Key account and the IRCC Secure account, you make payment when you submit, so that doesn't apply. Photocopy of the information page of your valid, yes. So I always include the valid passport and then any marked page, anything that has information about your family on it, anything that has stamps from other countries that's emphasizing, your travel history and good travel history. I would include the pages of an old passport if there are Canadian documents in there, like an old visa or a study permit, or a current, let's say, US visa. You could include that. Might not include it in the passport upload and might put it in the client information, but I do like to show them that information. 2 photos meeting the requirements of Appendix A. No, you don't need 2 photos. You just need 1 digital photo that the checklist is going to give you. So this is, a little bit conflicting, even though it was updated December 2021. I've never, ever, ever, ever included 2 photos. Photocopy, and I've never had a refusal on that. So photocopy of your current immigration document demonstrating, this is very important. So if you're currently studying, or in this case, this gentleman is working. I mean, he just recently re-entered Canada. He's got his closed work permit that's valid until the end of the month, like his visa. But now we're going to be applying for his visa to match the duration of his open work permit. So that would be, we'd show that he's got a closed and an open work permit. Show both of them and say, look, we're applying for a TRV until the end of the open work permit. Why? Because his wife's still back home. He wants to get settled here, do a bit more work, right? and then go back and come with his family. So marriage license or certificate, it's already been submitted to immigration, but we're going to include it again, right? And if you're currently studying in Canada, proof of your current studies. So that would be like, I usually would put for students the last 2 semesters of transcripts or an admission letter and the original transcript, okay, attesting to your attendance. If you're currently working, proof of your current employer. So that could be like an employment letter. Now, in this case, this gentleman's self-employed. So it's going to be challenging to include a letter from his current employer because he is self-employed. He has his own company. He was brought in under significant benefit Canadian interests. However, I believe with the closed work permit showing that he is currently working for his current company and potentially some contracts that he's been negotiating, that would be sufficient to show current employment. And once again, any other type of funds here to show that you are earning income, that you are actively contributing, either actively spending and studying or actively earning, working, would be supportive information in this case. And that's usually all you'd really need here. Now, let's just quickly take a sidetrack. Let's say it's applying for a visa for, let's say, your child, your dependent. Let's say you and your wife have lengthy visas, but you need one for your son, because if you want to all leave together, then he can't because his visa for some reason is shorter. And IRCC has made mistakes like that in the past. Well, you'd also want to show that that yes, they have that permit that goes that long, but that they're also a dependent on you. So you'd want to show that familial relationship, right? You'd want to show that the parents are here working. One of them is the principal applicant, and that the child is a dependent, and you'd want to show that relationship again. You want to establish it. Birth certificate, listed as parents in the passport, and the marriage certificate between the parents. You want to include all that maybe in the client information if you were just doing it for, let's say, a child, right? And because let's say the parents already had valid visas, or they have valid visitor visas till 2032, but the child they want to be able to travel with the child. So that's pretty much it. Now, now we look at this, are they pretty much the same? They're wanting a family information form. If you're already in Canada, you've already done a visitor visa, you actually don't need to do another family information form because you've already submitted that. Unless, of course, your family information, your composition has changed and you have not already updated IRCC with that information, then you would. Okay? But this is more a generic for outside the country, I would assume, because they are asking for family information here. They're asking for the less detailed family information, 5707. I always include not 5707, but 5645. It has more information than 5707. Document list. Yeah, this is the same. This is the same 2 photos. They still say that. Proof of financial support. They've added this, but it's not in here for the in Canada applicant, and that's probably because they know you're already in Canada and you have a status document like a work permit or a study permit, okay? And then, yeah, this is clearly for when you're applying from outside the country, and I will only reference then this one. So they seem to have bulked it all together, but I would go with the applicants in Canada list right here. And this is the instruction guide, 5256. They have instruction guide for how to apply for it. So they basically give you a little bit more information on how to answer these questions. Okay, so that is important. And then you would go and complete the forms that are required. Let's try and get to the right checklist in the IRCC Secure account. Like I said, when you're a representative, you get way more freedom and flexibility. You can basically choose the forms you want. You can choose the type of application. For their questionnaire for for self-represented applicants, it's a little bit more restrictive. So you have to make sure you answer the questions correctly and in the right order to get to the right potential types of applications you can do. So I will do it in this case of somebody who is in Canada. They have a work permit until the end of next year, but their visa is expiring in like 2 weeks, and maybe they want to go home in a couple of months and be able to re-enter Canada, and they don't want to have to apply for that visa again from an overseas office that might take 4 to 6 months, right? So let's go to IRCC secure account, and we'll go from here. Okay, so this is my fake account, as if I'm an immigrant. Ooh, what did I put here? No, it can't be. Maybe this is Winnipeg. Western City 4. This should be Victoria. Okay. So I'm going to delete this application. And we're going to go to, again, apply to come to Canada. I really hope they improve the user friendliness of this in the future. We're going to be applying for a visitor visa. What would you like to do in Canada? Well, what are you currently doing? Right? This gentleman is currently working. How long are you planning to stay in Canada? More than 6 months. Select the code that matches one on your passport. For this gentleman, he's from Iran. What is your country? Yes, he's currently in Canada. No, he does not. And date of birth, let's put in an approximation. Protect client confidentiality. Are lawful? No, not a lawful permanent resident of the U.S. What's your current immigration status? Currently is a worker in Canada. Subject to a removal order, applied. I'm in primary. Applying for an open work permit? No. Those are those public policies. Are you a spouse who holds a work permit? His spouse technically doesn't have a work permit right now. It's been approved in principle, but that's the letter of introduction. Work permits are not issued overseas. You still have to get it converted to an actual work permit when you land in Canada. So his spouse has not been to Canada just yet. So are you a spouse of a... this would be no. And no. Okay, so none of the public policies seem to apply. Are you approved in principle for permanent residence? No, you're not. Have you submitted a permanent residence? No. Do you have a written job offer? This is going to open up the ability for him to apply for a closed work permit. I'm going to put yes. It's a little bit confusing right now. To me, that means LMIA or LMIA exemption, which he did. He is technically right now still qualifying under an LMIA exemption for C11 significant benefit. Married. Let's do British Columbia. So these are the two things he's eligible to apply for: a work permit in Canada, which that would be because of the job offer that I put. But I know that that's not what we're going to go through because his work permit's already good until the end of next year under the public policy for Iranians. Now let's do temporary resident visa. This is what we're going to be applying for. Okay, so I have a work. Thing is, he has both. But if I were to put a work permit restricted to a specific employer, that work permit's only valid until the end of February, but an open work permit, his open work permit is valid until the end of next year. Okay, so let's see. Have you had an IRCC panel physician? No, he's not, but Iran is not a required medical country, and he doesn't intend to work in the following jobs. So they're not going to be asking for a medical exam, which is no. And doesn't need one because his wife's visa has been granted until the end of next year. So, yes, he's going to be using a representative. It will be me, but I will be submitting it through my authorized employer portal or authorized representative portal. And yeah, sure, why? I will definitely give a submission letter. Yes, he's given biometrics. Yes, they are valid. Yes, he'll be paying application fees. Yes. Yes. And let's see what they have here. Let's see what they generate. There we go. We got our 5257. So fantastic. They do want the status document. They're asking for basically everything on this questionnaire. So we got our 5257. We've got our use of representative form. These are not applicable. That's not applicable. That's not applicable. The digital photo is required, and these are the specifications for the digital photo. Make it easy. Just go get it done at a Shoppers Drug Mart or a London Drugs, but you can also take it yourself on a white background. I've never had any issues with people doing that, just as long as it looks professional and looks good. The way I see it, they have your picture on biometrics. You go in to do your biometrics, they have your picture. I still don't know why they're asking for such requirements on the digital photo. But if you don't want to delay anything or risk anything, then just go get it done right. Yeah, valid travel document. There's your passport, and yeah, just current immigration document. He's not currently studying, but he is currently proof of current employment. Now, they haven't put that on the document checklist here, right? They don't have proof of current employment. Where would you put that? You would put that in your client information. So for him, I would put that he's currently, he's self-employed. So how would I establish that? Well, he can include corporation documents. He can include some contracts that he's undergoing, or a statement of his company bank account. There are a few ways to prove that, okay, as for self-employment. And that's pretty much it. And then you just fill everything out here and upload it. Now, they're asking for 5257, and they're also asking for Schedule 1 as an optional document. They always ask this as an optional document, and I don't know why. Because when you look at Schedule 1, it's only required if you answer yes to any of the background questions 3 to 6. Some overseas visa offices require it if you answer yes to any of the background questions. And it's actually a relatively simple form. It's just like travel history that you could fill out if you wanted. But I'm not going to do that for this client. I don't think it's necessary. Client information, that is where I would include, this, which they've forgotten in their checklist here, which is your current employment, right? Proof of your current employment. So proof that he is currently working and self-employed. Because we're applying for the visa to go the length of the open work permit, we want to show that he's actually working, okay? Now, if you picked up a part-time job, I would include that as well, but I know that he is working for his own company and doing his own thing, so I would just want all that proof to establish that he is actively pursuing that and building his company here in Canada. And that's pretty much it. I'll quickly run through of course, this is where I would put both his work permits, and then the reason in the representative submission letter, because in the case his closed work permit is coming to an end by the end of February, and now he's got an open work permit, I would provide a little bit of context, right? So it was admitted on this, then fell under an Iranian public policy, has more time in Canada, wife is still back home, wanting to go establish a little bit more here, then travel back with her. That's why he needs the visa. He doesn't want to stay here and have his wife travel without him. Okay? So that he'd like to extend it. She has a visa now that's extended until the end of next year, so he'd like that as well. So I could also include proof of his wife's visa, because that was issued by an overseas office, right? In the client information as well. I might do that to say, hey, look, his wife is able to enter Canada until the end of 2025, and he would like that option as well. So client information is your best friend. It's where you can kind of put all this extra stuff. You always want to establish purpose and justify your reasons. And in representative submission letter, I love that as representative because it gives us an opportunity to explain the details of the case, like who this guy is, what he wants to do, why he's applying for a visa. And then once his visa gets approved, it'll likely take 7 to 14 days. He'll be in Canada, he'll send it to Ottawa, then it'll come back to him, and he'll have a visa, and he'll have the freedom to come in and out of Canada until the end of next year, which will be great. So let's go look at where do we find IRCC forms. Again, you always want to make sure you're using the most up-to-date one. So a form or checklist where we want IMM 5257. We know we answered the right things because, as you saw in the previous one, 5708 is when you're applying to extend visitor status, visitor record. This is a TRV from within Canada. And the 5257 is, it's a form that's, okay, so I've downloaded it before, of course. Let me open this with Adobe, and we'll have a look through it. Of course, I'm not going to fill it out right now with the client information, but let's quickly roll through it. We're not going to be able to upload it until we validate, and once you validate, it'll say validated, yes. Once it says validated yes, then you can save that form, okay? And you're able to upload it into this here. If it's not validated, if it's an image file, if it's a PDF that's, yeah, just like I said, an image file, it's not, because these are smart JavaScript PDFs, so you have to upload the validated version, the secured form, and it won't let you otherwise. So you do need to download Adobe Reader, which is free. So UCI, Universal Client Identifier, of course, he has a UCI. It's in My Authorized Representative portal under his information. It's on his work permit. It's on his closed work permit. It's on his open work permit, and it's on his visa. So put in your UCI if you know it. You want service in English or French. In this case, he would want English. And what's he looking for? A visitor visa? I know, it seems confusing, right? Because, well, he's a worker. But again, we got to get away from this visitor visa terminology and just start calling it what it should be, which is a TRV, temporary resident visa. Full name he'll put in, and I'll make sure that this matches on his previous work permit application and visa application, right? Sometimes people declare other nicknames they've used or maiden names, so I do like this all to be consistent. Of course, sex, date of birth, place of birth, this should match his previous applications. I also always tell people place of birth generally should match your passport. That's one way that I look at it. Citizenship, of course, it'll be the citizenship of your passport in most cases. Now, I do just want to quickly mention, I've had clients in the past who recently got approved, actually, which is great, for a startup visa, and they were born in the United Soviet Socialist Republic, the USSR. So that actually is still indicated as a country here, USSR, right? They were born when it was the USSR, not when it was modern day Kazakhstan or modern day Russia, depending on where they were born, right? So if you can't find the country here, or it no longer exists, you can always put a letter of explanation. Everything that seems redundant, anything that you're questioning, don't be afraid to put a letter of explanation. Current country or territory of residence, I would put Canada, because he's in Canada now. Status, he's a worker, and it was from the date he entered, which was, I think he entered Canada just yesterday, so that would be February 12th. 2, I would use the end date of his open work permit. Previous countries or territories of residence, he's only been living in Iran or Canada, so I would put then, during the past 5 years, have you lived in any country other than your country of citizenship, Iran, or your current country or territory of residence, Canada, for more than 6 months? No. Yes, same as country or territory where applying. He's applying from Canada. Marital status, make sure that I put in his wife here, family name, given names that they match, and that the marriage date is the same that I've put on previous applications, so there's no conflicts. It's easy to make those mistakes. Dyslexia, mix up month and day and month. Okay, so just be cautious with that. Have you previously been married? In this case, he would be no. Native language, this would be Farsi, and communicate in English. And which language are you most at ease? This only becomes a question to answer if you choose both English and French here, because then it wants to know, hey, are you better in English or are you better in French? Okay, but he can only communicate in English. Passport number, and this is an easy one to always miss. Have you taken a test designated? Yes, he has. He's taken IELTS. Okay, passport number, I would put that in there. He has a national identity document from Iran, and if there is no expiry date, it's usually acceptable to put 3000-01-01, I believe, which basically means it never expires, because some of these national identity documents actually do not have an expiry date. But if it does have an expiry date, which I think an Iranian one does, we'll put that in. USPR card, this would be no. Contact information. Now, they're not sending a visa in the mail, okay? Unlike a visitor record or unlike a work permit. They're just not sending it in the mail. You have to send your passport to get it stamped from within Canada. So, current mailing address, I would put where, he's currently living or where he can receive mail. And if it's the same as mailing address, then this would be yes, and it'll be the same thing. But if he chooses to in a month, maybe he's getting a different accommodation or just staying at an Airbnb for now. Maybe the best mailing address to use in case there's any correspondence they want to send would be one of your representative or a mailbox or of a friend, okay? But your current residential address might be different. Telephone number, you don't have to include alternate, but you can. Fax number, it's not a requirement. And email address, of course, you put in your email address here. If you put in your consultant's email address, you're able to, and that would be if you're using a representative. So when a representative is filling out this application, they should be putting their email address here. Purpose of my visit. Well, it's not really a visit, but I would say this is question because he's already returned as a worker, but I would put returning worker. It's not for business. I mean, he is a temporary business immigrant worker. Not for tourism, not for short-term studies, not a returning student. He is a returning worker. It's not a super visa. It could also be other, but I would put returning worker. And how long do you plan to stay? I would put from, you could start from the date that it is today and until the end of his work permit, okay? His work permit is valid until the end of next year. Funds available for my stay. You could put in here any number like 5,000, 10,000 roughly. This would become more important if you were like a tourist, right? They're going to want to make sure that you have the money if you're applying to get your TRV extended when you're within Canada. But if you're working in Canada, right, they've already kind of like you have money coming in, which is why you're going to want to show your letter from your current employer or bank statement or whatever. And if you're a student, they've already kind of done their due diligence on your proof of funds. So funds available for my stay, I would just put kind of what you have in liquid cash right now, and it should be between $5,000 and $10,000. That's what most people should have that are, stable and working. Name, address, and relationship of person's institution I will visit. These aren't really this form is designed as if it's a visitor visa application from outside the country, but I would just put here for him because he is working. I would put his company name, right, and the address of his company. I would put maybe a business partner or an associate for name 2, or one of his clients that he's working with. All right. Education. Yes, I would make sure that this matches what was originally put on his work permit application. Employment, I would make sure that this all matches. Okay. And if you need extra fields because this is employment over the last 10 years, and I know he has more than 3 entries, I would include an additional employment history section, just your own table, in the client information, okay? Now, this is really important. So background section, no, has not and been denied, no. And previously applied to enter or remain. Yes, I would say entered Canada, give the first day he entered the country. The first time last year in April sometime, and the applications he's applied for, right? So you would say entered Canada on April at Vancouver International Airport. You'd also put applied for open work permit under public policy, application number W, blah, 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 XX was approved. Have you ever been committed, charged? No. Did you serve in any military? Now, this is important because, yes, Iranians typically do have mandatory service, and I do recall putting yes on his previous work permit application and putting in those details that we had put prior to. Yeah, never saw active combat, but was mandatory to serve. Okay. If you answered yes to 3 to 4, like I said before, 3 to 6 above, you may be required to fill IMM. They've never requested IMM 5257 Schedule 1 for this gentleman, so I'm not going to include it because they say you may be required, not that you have to. And then I always say yes, you can intend to be contacted. Type the applicant's name or your name, right? And enter the date, and then you'll click validate, and you're good. Then we can upload that. So this is pretty much it, and don't save. This is how you would do this application, and we're going to show, his study permits and the proof that he's currently self-employed, and we're good to go. So I hope that encouraged a lot of you to, if your visa is about to expire, go get it extended. And when you do, you're going to have 30 days to send your passport to Ottawa. So don't forget to send it, or else they will then just after the fact refuse it. And then you're going to have a refusal on your record. So make sure it's when you can remain in the country for a little bit and you want to get that visa extended. But take advantage of it because the processing time is very fast. Like I've seen it happen in as quick as 6 days, and it's never taken more than 15 or 20 days tops. Okay. So that is how to extend your visa from within Canada. So thanks again for tuning in to my channel. Please like and subscribe. Please ask any questions you have in the comments section, because it enables me to respond to those questions publicly, okay? So it's holding me accountable for giving the correct information. And it's also enabling other people to learn and creating more engagement, which helps my channel and helps me to continue putting out this valuable content rather than trying to message me offline. If you want an answer offline and you want to meet with me privately, you're more than welcome to book a consultation with me or book some paid time, okay? I do my best to answer all the questions that I can. Make sure you're detailed. Of course, you can cleanse it for certain confidential information, but you can include enough details that I could understand the situation and the context of your application. And if not, then yeah, we'd have to go to, a consultation. But I hope this was valuable to you guys. And yeah, please like and subscribe, share this video. It's my goal to help people do their own immigration applications. It's my goal as a consultant to transfer my knowledge and what I've learned throughout this whole process of the Canadian immigration system to those who can do their own applications and who want to do their own applications. It is where I see the industry going. It's where I see the future of Canadian immigration. And yeah, so best of luck, and let me know if you have any questions, and thank you. I appreciate a like and subscribe, and have a great day.